My guest on the Global Conversation is Olivér Várhelyi, the EU's Commissioner for Neighbourhood and Enlargement. We are in Brussels ahead of the EU Western Balkan Summit, and I try to understand how the process of enlargement is going. Commissioner Várhelyi, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
First of all, I would like to know, in such uncertain times with the war in Ukraine and with the energy crisis, why should the Western Balkans enlargement be a priority for Europe?
I think if there is one positive outcome of this war, if there is any, that is a very clear reinforcement of the need to enlarge the European Union. We have seen that the three countries who have applied for membership, who are the most affected by Russia's war against Ukraine, have immediately decided to place an application for membership because they see EU membership as the only long-term tool and possibility and guarantee for long-term peace, security and prosperity. And this is why it is very clear now that if Europe wants to create its own long-term peace, security and prosperity, it has to enlarge. Because if the region surrounding the European Union is not part of the European Union, it is clear that the vulnerabilities of these regions will only increase. And this is why I think this war has shown to the European Union as well that it is in our interest to enlarge with the Western Balkans and later on with the Eastern Partnership countries.
What can the upcoming EU Western Balkans Summit in Tirana add to this process?
I think there is always one very important element that we keep on forgetting, and that is that we need to keep the Western Balkan partners fully involved and included in our own debates. So this way we can talk about those issues that are pressing all of us, those issues that are challenges for the both of us. For example, energy. The energy crisis in Europe doesn't have borders. We have a similar energy crisis on the Western Balkans. Migration. We are in this together because the migration pressure on the Western Balkan route is also pressure on Europe. And I can go on and on and on. But there are also practicable things that we can do with the Western Balkans so that we can bring forward their participation in many of our European policies. For example, we hope to sign the roaming agreement, which will bring the Western Balkan countries into our Roam Like at Home area, meaning that Europeans visiting the Balkans, people from the Balkans visiting Europe, will be using their telephones when roaming at exactly the same price as in Europe.
One candidate country, Serbia, is failing to align with the EU sanctions regime against Russia. Can they keep their candidate status and have an opt-out from the EU sanctions?
I don't think that they have an opt-out on sanctions. What we see is that Serbia is in a peculiar situation compared to the other parts of the Western Balkans. Don't forget that Serbia has still have to finish a dialogue in the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue to get to an agreement on the modalities of the coexistence. And this is why the vulnerabilities of Serbia are much higher when it comes to exposure to Russia. One should not forget that Serbia is our ally, and we should treat Serbia as our ally. Serbia has been voting with us throughout the UN General Assembly votes, condemning Russia for all the acts carried out in Ukraine. To me, this is a very strong political message. When it comes to sanctions, yes, we will have to see a gradual and progressive alignment, but I'm very hopeful that this will also come. But first we need to also see how we can provide security and stability guarantees for Serbia long term.
You mentioned the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue towards the normalization of the relations. What could be the end of this?
I think we all know what could be the end of this. The end of this would be recognition of Kosovo as an independent state by Serbia. But for this to happen, the road is still long. And for this to happen, I think that a genuine political arrangement will have to be in place that provides sufficient guarantees both for Serbia and for Kosovo that creates long-term peace, security for both.
And then lately we have seen various press reports about the so-called Franco-German non-paper or proposal to find a solution on this issue. Have you seen this paper, and do you think it could be a way forward?
I have. I think it can lay the foundations for a long-term arrangement, but there are also other elements on which we need to work. But first, we have to re-establish trust in the dialogue. This is why it was important to achieve an agreement on the number plates issue. This is why it was very important that we can move forward on at least implementing the previous arrangements.
When could the European Union lift the Schengen visa regime for the citizens of Kosovo?
We have very high hopes that still this year this is going to take place. We understand that the work in the Council is very well advanced. And I think that the Czech presidency has found a way how to do it. We are anticipating a decision basically next month. I do hope that there will be no last-minute surprises and that we can finally provide this facility also for Kosovo, the last country or entity in the region who does not enjoy this yet.
Let's talk a little bit about Bosnia and Herzegovina. Their separatism is a real danger. You just met Milorad Dodik, the leader of the Bosnian Serbs. Do you think he is a reliable partner to have a European path for Bosnia?
Well, yes, of course, politics is always about personalities as well, but not only. And my visit was quite a surprise even to me, because what I have seen that on the basis of a very clear result of the elections, with clear majorities both in the federation but also at the state level and also in the Republika Srpska, and with our proposal on the table for the Council to grant candidate status to Bosnia and Herzegovina, things have started to change. And it seems, but it would be for the Bosnian authorities to tell us that we can expect even more coming until the end of the year. And if all goes well, we will see a swift picking up of functioning by the new institutions. I think this is very good news. And in that, one has to acknowledge also the contribution of the president of the Republika Srpska.
NGOs regularly warn about so-called democratic backsliding in Serbia. How do you see the rule of law situation there?
I think that we have managed to change fundamentally not only the perception but also the approach of the government when it comes to the rule of law. And there major reforms have been delivered. Like this referendum on the court system, a major amendment of the constitution in relation to the judiciary, the program for media freedom. Of course, it means that this work has to continue, and by now I think it is clear also for the Serbian authorities that progress, overall progress in the accession negotiations based on the new methodology are always conditional upon progress made in the rule of law area. So I think our offer is very clear. We are ready to go faster. This was brought in by the new methodology. But for that, we need also the candidate country to go faster. So if Serbia goes faster on the rule of law area, we should be able to move faster with them on the accession negotiations as well.
When we talk about democracy and rule of law on the Western Balkans, you are also subject of criticism coming from European Parliament MEPs. They are saying basically that you are trying to downplay the rule of law worries in different countries, for example, Serbia. What is your reply to these accusations?
First of all, it was my proposal that has put front and center the rule of law issue. The new methodology was proposed for adoption in the Council as early as February 2020. So basically in the first quarter of a year in the lifetime of this Commission. It means that this is now, as I explained on the case of Serbia, that this is now the other benchmark in terms of overall progress in the accession negotiations. So accusing me of downplaying rule of law, how should I put it, sounds more like a political game than a real and founded criticism.
So you see yourself as a neutral player in the enlargement process?
Why shouldn't I see myself like that? Otherwise I wouldn't do that job.
Okay, let's talk about North Macedonia, because North Macedonia could be also a symbol of how, the enlargement process was blocked for years. They have waited 17 years for the negotiations, and now that the negotiations are ready to start, they are blocked by Bulgaria. So what are the prospects that, this kind of nationalistic debates with the neighbors could be overcome in the Western Balkans?
What do you mean, nationalistic debate?
So basically, why the Bulgarians are blocking the negotiations is based on, accepting the Bulgarian language as a minority language and Bulgarian minority as a nation-building asset.
Well, I think it is more complex than that. First of all, it is very clear that in the Copenhagen criteria, you have also in the political criteria the need to respect the rights of people belonging to minorities. In the case of North Macedonia and Bulgaria, this issue has been there for quite a while. The other political criteria under the Copenhagen criteria is to have good neighborly relations. This has always been a criteria. And don't forget that any enlargement requires the unanimous support of all the member states. Because this is not a foreign policy issue. This is not just a question of good relations or development cooperation. This is much more than that. This is more fundamental. This is about welcoming new members into our own structures. This is about also the internal politics of the European Union. And this is why these issues always have to be taken very seriously. I'm very happy that together with the French presidency we have been able to put on the table a framework, a political and legal framework, through which we will be able now, and the two countries will be able now to manage this issue and overcome all the difficulties. And needless to say, on the Balkans, these sort of issues are always recurrent.
Do you think the Western Balkans enlargement could happen in the current legal framework of the European Union? You mentioned unanimity, for example, and the European Parliament is challenging that.
The European Parliament has always very good advice on how the Council should work. So I would leave it to the Council to decide under which rules and conditions they would like to work. I certainly wouldn't give advice to the Council how to work. I don't find it realistic to think that on major issues like enlargement, which also requires ratification of the amendment of the funding treaties, the member states would give up their right to unanimity.
President Macron proposed to have a so-called political community, which is becoming a reality. And many people say that instead of a full EU membership, these countries should get a kind of enhanced cooperation. What do you think about this?
I don't recall this, what you are claiming President Macron has said. What I do recall is that when this proposal was made, it was made very, very clear that this is not instead of membership, this is not instead of enlargement. To my mind, and we have seen with the first meeting already that this confirmed, it is very important to keep our neighborhood very close to us. If our neighborhood is not our closest ally, then how can Europe be a global player?
And how should this region keep, the people's support for a European perspective? Because we have seen in some countries on the Western Balkans, there is a growing skepticism because the people think that Europe is simply too far.
Well, I would argue with this. But I do accept the underlying statement in your question. The underlying statement, to my understanding, being that they don't see when and how this will actually take place. And this is a major political mistake that has been committed by the previous Commission. Because don't forget, the previous Commission started out by saying no enlargement. So basically Europe has turned its back on the Western Balkans and its neighborhood. So no wonder that this has an impact ever since. No wonder that people do remember. But if you look at the track record of this Commission, what you will find is that we have done everything, first of all, to drag enlargement out of the ditch, which the previous Commission has left it in. Second, to bring it back on the top political agenda. And third, to focus not only on the institutional Brussels bubble focus, which is how many chapters, which country is candidate, which is not, but to talk about the real issue. And the real issue is the real integration on the ground. So when can these countries catch up in terms of social and economic development with Europe? When can the people of these countries enjoy the same level of access to European markets? And when can we enjoy the same level of access to this region? This is why we have also put, apart from the new methodology, which have reset the credibility of the whole enlargement policy, we have put on the table a robust, substantive economic and investment plan for the Western Balkans that is mobilizing 30 billion euros, which is 1/3 of the GDP of the whole region. And through that, we are addressing the main bottlenecks, which are, we need trade routes. So we need highways, railroads. We need a new energy system. So we need renewable energy. We need alternative sources of gas and electricity. We need new education systems so that the people get the right skills with which they can get into jobs. And through all this, we should be able to accelerate the creation of growth and jobs. And another very important element is that we are also promoting the regional cooperation, so that within the region, since they will become member states anyhow, they will have to provide the exact same treatment as we are providing within the European Union from one member state to the next. And only through the regional cooperation, another third of the GDP could be additionally created. So we have a plan. Now it starts to bring the results. It starts to bring the results. You will see the roaming, you will see the highways emerging, you will see new energy projects coming up, where Europe is going to be in the lead.
According to your estimation, which country could be the next to join the EU and when?
Well, I'm not dealing with predictions like this. I do hope that we will have at least one country who will finish its accession negotiations by the end of my mandate.
Commissioner Olivér Várhelyi, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you. Thank you very much.